expecting more than 100 people. We have 125 registered. So I'm just going to get started, and that way we can make the most use of the time the governor has for us. So I feel like I should start by saying, okay, now where were we? Because it was a year ago, we were just preparing for the governor to keynote our Small Business of the Year Awards program. And we had some great awardees, and the governor had confirmed we were marketing and promoting the event, and then COVID happened. So a couple of thoughts on that. One is, I don't think it's anybody better to have had in that position than the governor dealing with this situation and communicating with us at that time. It was very, very helpful. And the second is, the business community has been dramatically impacted by these events, as have all of us. But we're delighted that the governor has chosen to be here with us and return, making it one of his first live chamber appearances since this all happened. So thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, I'm Chris Cooney. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this COVID Resources and Recovery Zoom call. It's being sponsored by Bridgewater State University, and we're pleased to have so many people with us today. This week, like Friday afternoons over the past 13 months, we will hear from city, state, and federal resources. This call is being recorded, and we will be posting it on the Chamber's COVID Recovery Resources page and on YouTube at metrosouthchamber.com. We ask you to post all questions you may have to the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, and our regular panelists will answer them directly as the program goes on. Today, we are delighted to host Governor Charlie Baker. We have forwarded several questions to his staff prior to today, and the governor has agreed to address these items in his remarks. You can imagine what some of them are. Some of you submitted them to me repeatedly over the last few weeks, very common themes. I want to thank Susan Whitaker and Margaret LaForest of MOBD, Eli Spayu, from the SBA, and the mayor for their participation in these calls over the past 13 months. They really have made a difference in providing very current information to businesses, especially as this whole thing came to be. Their ever-present support has assisted thousands of businesses this past year. I also want to thank our partners who have been promoting these weekly calls. They include a significant number. I think Emma may be able to list them for you, so I don't have to read the entire 17 or 18, but they are a number of business, civic, and cultural organizations that are active in Brockton and the surrounding communities. It's now my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Metro South Chamber Board of Directors, Joe Casey, who's president and COO of the Harbor One Bank. Joe.
Thank you, Chris. We are very fortunate to have so many engaged public and private chamber partners. And on behalf of the chamber, I want to also thank them for their steadfast support of the businesses throughout our region. As Chris mentioned, we have hosted more than 100 remote sessions since this pandemic started 13 months ago. And these Friday Resources and Recovery Zoom calls have attracted more than 1,000 participants, including local, regional, state, and federal officials. Today, we're very happy to welcome Governor Charlie Baker, who has provided extraordinary and informed leadership during this crisis. Also here with us today to introduce the governor is past chamber chair and Bridgewater State University President Fred Clark. We appreciate Bridgewater State University's decades-long support of this spring government affairs focused gathering. Fred?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Joe. The chamber is very fortunate to have your leadership during this very challenging time, and Bridgewater State University is again pleased and honored to support the chamber. It is truly my sincere pleasure to introduce our extraordinary governor. With such an extensive career in both state finances and healthcare, it's hard to imagine a governor having any better resume to confront a pandemic than our governor. In the governor's official biography, he notes that he and the lieutenant governor have assembled a diverse team to, quote, put forth a get stuff done approach to build a state government, unquote. I love that. Doers love what they do, and our governor is a doer. You've gotten a lot of stuff done, Governor, and throughout the pandemic, your leadership has made a significant difference. Let me just say that here at Bridgewater, we've done 38,000 COVID tests since the beginning of the pandemic. We've had less than a 1% positivity rate, And that's directly attributable to your work, the work you've done with the Broad Institute, as well as the extremely helpful public health guidance and budgetary support that you have provided. Our student retention rate increased over the past year and a half by 2%, and students are staying on track with their college educations. That's another indicator of your positive impact. You might not always hear these words, Governor, thank you, enough as you make some of the tough decisions throughout this historic challenge. But on behalf of our students, on behalf of this chamber, and on behalf of this region, we are all truly grateful for your leadership. And let me just say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor of our Commonwealth, the Honorable Charlie Baker.
Thank you very much, Fred. And I honestly can't wait until we can get back to doing this stuff in person. I always enjoy the sort of walk through the room that usually happens before one of these speaking events, where I get a chance to chat with people and hear from them about what's on their minds and do the best I can to incorporate that into whatever it is I have to say. And it's also easier to get a sense for what the audience is really interested in when you can see the whole thing, as opposed to only being able to see those who happen to be on the screen at any particular time. That said, I think everybody's learned that there are certain things you can do virtually and remotely that no one would have ever expected to do. And I constantly need to remind myself that way back in 2019, we proposed a tax credit for employers who made it possible for some of their employees to work remotely, to see if we could do something about some of the congestion on the roads in and around Massachusetts during commuting hours. And I have watched what's happened as so many organizations have pivoted in the midst of all this uncertainty to find ways to either operate in person, and I'm going to come back to the Broad solution that Fred talked about in a minute, but so many people who figured out ways to do all kinds of things they never thought they would be able to do remotely when all this began. And I've also talked to a lot of my colleagues in the employer community who said, you know, I never had any idea how much money I spent on travel and entertainment. And we'll certainly spend money on travel and entertainment when all this subsides, but we probably won't spend it at quite the same levels we did before, because we've discovered there's a lot of things we didn't think we could do virtually that it turns out we can. And that's one of the few sort of bright lights that comes out of all the darkness of the past few years. With respect to the Broad and the colleges and universities, that's a really interesting story, because way back when COVID began, one of the things we did was put together a medical advisory board, and we just rounded up a collection of some of the smartest and brightest around here. We all know there's lots of those people who we met with once a week just to talk about stuff. And in some cases, it was to confirm what we were hearing from other countries or from our federal government, or it was to confirm what I was hearing from other states, or maybe what Mary Lou was hearing from her peers in other states, Mary Lou Sutters. Or maybe to just take some issue that we were nervous and didn't know what to think about, and see what this group of epidemiologists and scientists would think about it. And in the midst of all that, we got into this conversation about kids coming back to college. And I was taking, at this point in time, a lot of incoming from people in the media and from some local officials about the dangers they saw of bringing a whole bunch of kids back to campus here in the Commonwealth, some of whom will be from Massachusetts and some of whom will be from all over the place, and the risks associated with doing that. And we were discussing this at one of the medical advisory board meetings, and trying to weigh the relative issues associated with it. And Eric Lander was actually on this medical advisory board, and credit to him. He came to every single meeting for basically a year. And he said, you know, what if somebody developed a testing program that you could use to do surveillance on a pretty regular basis on students, faculty, and staff? And we said, well, that would be great, but it would have to be affordable, and we'd have to figure out how to move the samples around and get the test results back in a really short period of time. And that led to a conversation with the Broad about what they thought it might take for them to be able to provide the tests. And then we talked to Thermo Fisher, which is another Massachusetts-based company who makes a lot of the gear that people use to process this stuff. And then we talked to the federal government about whether or not we could spend some of the testing money we got from the feds to buy some of the equipment for Thermo Fisher to make it available to the Broad, so that the Broad could create this big time scaled, affordable testing capacity for colleges, universities, private schools, sort of all kinds of people. And the answers basically to all of those turned out to be yes. And in a fairly short period of time, we bought $10 million worth of equipment from Thermo Fisher, which the Broad installed and then staffed, and it turned into a testing program that was turning tests around in 24 hours and doing roughly, at various points in time, anywhere from 60 to 120,000 tests a day, depending upon which schools were involved in the process. And I remember talking to a bunch of colleges and universities in the fall who said, you know, that program made a huge difference with respect to our ability to get comfortable about having kids on campus, faculty on campus, staff on campus, and being able to do it in a way that was logistically possible and financially affordable. And the program ended up spreading. There were schools all over the Northeast that ended up using this. And it's still in use up until this point in time. And as Fred pointed out, it was a wonderful tool for Bridgewater as they went through the process of trying to create some confidence that they could truly run a surveillance program and make it possible for people to have some sense about what that was all going to look like if they did. And that was just one of a whole bunch of things that came out of that medical advisory board. After we got done talking about the colleges and universities, we started talking about K through 12 education, which then led to this pooled testing initiative, which 185 school districts in Massachusetts are currently participating in right now, which makes it possible for K through 12 schools to do the same sort of weekly testing of all of the kids, faculty, and staff in their schools. And it's given us a benchmark on what the presence of COVID looks like in our in-person K through 12 schools here in Massachusetts. And we're paying for that with the federal money, and we're gonna pay for it all the way through the summer. So as schools offer summer school, it will be a unique opportunity for them to incorporate this kind of a program into providing sort of a surveillance message for the folks who are working and the kids who are students as they enter into that. But I think sometimes, first of all, Fred, I really appreciate the comments and especially the comments about the Broad program. But that literally came about as a result of that medical advisory board and the constant conversation we were having with some of the sharpest minds in town about this. And we just happened to have Thermo Fisher, who was located here in Massachusetts and made a lot of the gear that you could create a rapid testing program with. And I think sometimes we don't always appreciate just how much bandwidth there is of one kind or another here in Massachusetts when you get into these kinds of places and spaces. We've had an incredible collection of partners on our testing program. We're the second largest testing state on a per capita basis in the continental United States. Ironically, the only state that's tested more people per capita than we have is Rhode Island, which kind of bums me out a little bit because they're my neighbor. But we and they are pretty much the national leaders on this. And if you track a lot of the testing, especially from January forward, we're still doing about 85 to 95,000 tests a day, which is pretty consistent with kind of what we've been doing all along. At times we're over 100, sometimes we're under 85, usually on weekends and stuff like that. But our testing has stayed pretty constant all the way through the fall and the winter and into the spring. And if you look at the national data, we've gone from about 1.8 million tests a day down to about 1.1 million tests a day. So I think, once again, people in Massachusetts, they engage and they stay engaged. The fact that we still have a pretty high level of people getting tested if they think they need to get tested for whatever reason is a really good thing for the Commonwealth with respect to surveillance. And it's been interesting because I follow this is probably way more than you guys want to know about this, but I follow the hospitalization rates per capita in every state, and I follow the testing, the case counts in every state per capita pretty much every day, along with all the vaccination data. And what's really interesting is our positive test rates are actually top 20 in terms of the number of people, not the percentage. Our percentage is very low because we continue to test pretty high. But the number of new cases that we find every day puts us in about the top 20 nationally in terms of new cases. But what's interesting is our hospitalization rate is actually quite low on a per capita basis. And there are many states. In fact, it's the lowest of any state on the Eastern Seaboard going this way, and it's the lowest of any state all the way to Minnesota, cutting from here to Minnesota. I didn't include New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine because they're just geographically, they look completely different than we do. But the point I'm trying to make here is that because we continue to have a community that has an interest in getting tested, and because we have a lot of places where you can still get tested, we're identifying cases, helping people isolate and do the right things. And as a result, we have a hospitalization rate that all the way through, sort of the fall into January and as we've come down to now, has been significantly below a lot of states that test a lot lower than we do on case counts, because I think we're discovering a lot more of the cases than they are, which again is a good thing. The 2 points I'd make about the vaccine program, the first is we were the first state in the country to get to the point where 2/3 of our adult population have received at least one dose. That's the really good news, but the even better news is we have one of the highest take-up rates on second doses if you get a first dose of any place in the country. And there are many, many people in other states, few percent, 5 to 8% of the people who get a first dose who don't go back and get a second dose. We don't see that at all here. If people get a first dose in Massachusetts, they get a second dose. And so what that means is we've done about 6 million shots so far, and we have about 2.6 million people who are first dose tested. Who are fully dosed. So they've gotten both shots. And then we got another 1 million people or so who have gotten a first shot and who will get a second shot. So we're well on our way to getting within shouting distance at this point of having, by the end of the month of May, pretty close to 4 million people who are fully vaccinated. And each week, as we add people to the first shot community, given the current take-up rate we have on second shots, we'll see those people come back. And it's my hope that people will continue to do what they've been doing. We'll make adjustments to the way the program works, and we'll continue to work with folks like Mayor Sullivan and others on making sure that we have the right infrastructure to support the initiatives we have going on in the 20 communities that were most disproportionately affected by COVID. But I think in many ways, we've made a lot of progress on this front, and many of the most vulnerable among us, a lot of the seniors, the folks with 2 comorbidities, the numbers in those populations are north of 80% have gotten vaccinated at this point. And I think that has a lot to do as well with why our hospitalization rate is finally below 600, as low as it's been since sort of the beginning of November. And as we continue to move down that track of reducing our case counts, reducing hospitalizations, and continuing to see increases in the population that's getting vaccinated, creates big opportunities for all of us from an economic point of view. And hopefully we'll be able to move a little bit beyond what we've been doing, which is coming up with programs to support businesses in conjunction with our colleagues at the federal level that are struggling because of all the issues associated with COVID and the rules and the guidance and all the rest, and get into the business of helping communities and helping businesses move forward. And one of the things we are very glad, two things I just want to mention that the legislature worked on last year that were particularly important. One was we finally got our housing choice legislation passed, which will dramatically accelerate our ability to both site, zone, plan, and build more housing of all kinds in Massachusetts, which we desperately need. You know, we used to build about 30,000 new units of housing every year like clockwork, and that number has fallen into the 10 or 12,000 a year for the better part of the past 25 years. And as a result, we do not have enough of any kind of housing. We don't have enough senior housing. We don't have enough workforce housing. We don't have enough affordable housing. And when you have shortages, we all know what happens to price. And a lot of that had to do with the way our laws were written, and they made it really hard for local communities to move forward on much of anything. The legislature, thankfully, enacted legislation that we filed a couple of years ago to move that forward, and we think the possibilities there to really get into the housing business in a big way are quite real. We also have a lot of dry powder in our own case that we can invest in housing programs, and we plan to. And we can do that in conjunction in many cases with other state resources and with some of the federal funds that are being made available through what I think of as the stimulus bill, the legislation that Congressman Neal worked on that was signed back in January by President Biden. Before you even get to the last two pieces of legislation, the one that's been signed that we don't have any rules for yet, that we're still waiting for guidance on, and the one that's currently being debated. There's a significant amount of resource that the state has available to support development of all kinds. And we plan to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort putting that money to work over the next 12 to 24 months. The two other things I would mention with regard to that, one is we think the future of work is a little bit cloudy at this point in time. And what I mean by that is it's not so much about some of it's about what kinds of jobs people are going to have post-pandemic, although we have a lot of thoughts about skill building and career technical institutes and a whole series of initiatives around that for folks who are in industries that don't really recover. But there's also this whole question about how people are going to work, where they're going to work, and what that's going to mean about where they live. And you know, 1 million people used to come in and out of Boston every day, and there's some number that's going to come in out of Boston every day, but I don't think it's going to be the same as it was. And we hired McKinsey to actually help us think through this, because what happens to where people work and how they work has real implications for how we think about spending money on transportation, how we work with our local colleagues around what their downtowns are going to look like and how they're going to work, what it means with regard to how childcare is going to be set up and where it's going to be located, and how we're going to make sure that all those moms who weren't able to work because of all the issues associated with what happened to childcare can find their way back into the workforce. If you're working 2 or 3 days a week from home and 2 or 3 days a week in an office, where are you going to want your childcare to be? When you were working 5 days a week downtown, you might have, whatever downtown is for you, you may have wanted it located somewhere near where you worked. It may be that now you want it somewhere closer to your home, or it could be that you're going to want to be able to think differently about it than you thought about it before. And I think there's going to be some really interesting challenges for us as we settle into whatever the new normal is. And I'm not talking about masks and distancing and that sort of thing. I'm actually talking about where people work, how they work, and what that means about where they live, and what the support system needs to look like to serve them if they're going to be dealing with a different kind of day than the day they've been dealing with pre-pandemic. And that report should be out sometime later this spring. We're hoping it will create a robust conversation about both how the state and its resources and our colleagues in local government can work with our colleagues in the private sector to make sure that we accentuate and lean into the opportunities to do more. And just as importantly, come up with strategies to mitigate if there are situations and circumstances where we need to help in that direction. One of the things I've wondered a little bit about is if there are going to be less people in downtowns walking around buying coffee, sandwiches, staying for dinner, whatever those things might be, does that mean we need to help our colleagues in local government think about how to make some of their downtown space a little more residential and a little less commercial? And what does that look like? And what resources do we have that we can help communities sort of reimagine that with? Are people going to start thinking differently about walkable boulevards as opposed to drivable boulevards? What does everything getting delivered mean with respect to how we think about issues around surface roads in our communities and people's ability to get, their groceries delivered, because that's what they've been doing for the past 6 months, and it's not something they want to give up and go back to their grocery store for. So I guess what I would say is I do think we're coming out of this thing. I do think when we come out of it, we will have some big decisions to make. I want us to make these decisions in a way that is forward-looking, not backward-looking. And we want to be a partner, and we want to put a lot of the state and federal resource that's available to us, along with the federal resources that are available to our colleagues in local government, together to make sure that we're doing the right things to build strong communities that are forward-looking, that we're doing the right things to make sure kids sort of catch up on a lot of the stuff they've lost, and that we put money into workforce and skill building programs that are going to help people either transition to a different kind of job or move into a job where there's a significant opportunity for them as they move forward into the future. And obviously that's something I know the Chamber spends a lot of time thinking about, and we'll certainly look forward to working with you on it. And I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take questions if you have a few. And again, I appreciate a chance to do this. I really look forward, frankly, to doing this sometime in the fall or sometime later on where we can get back in the business of talking to each other face to face and having the chance that you get for a little more dialogue when you're actually in the same place. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor. I don't know, Fred, if you're going to jump back in, but a couple of the questions that folks had submitted earlier, one was around UI. I know that people are still at the table around UI increases. It's been shocking to some small employers, especially who didn't lay anybody off. And now they got these projected increases. Are those increases solid, or are they still a fluid discussion going on?
There's still a pretty robust conversation going on about what we can do with regard to UI. Part of the reason we put off the payment periods was to buy us and to buy the employer community some time to see if we could come up with some strategies, either on the funding side or by other means to take some of the bite out of this, especially as it relates to small business. And it's my hope that at some point in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to put some ideas in front of the business community and the legislature to mitigate some of this, because we know it's a real issue.
That's terrific. Another question we have is around tourism. All these hotels, we have 1,000 rooms in our region. I know there's 10,000 rooms, at least in Boston. Will there be international restrictions at the airports come August 1st? Will there be requirements for hotels to have some proof of employees being vaccinated or that type of thing? What's your vision of seeing these rooms come back to life?
I don't expect or anticipate. The feds have basically said they're not going to get into the business of vaccine passports. I do think, I've talked to a number of employers who said to me that they're not going to require some of their people to come back to work, but if you do want to go back to the office, they're going to expect you to get vaccinated to come back to the office. I think I've raised on a couple of our White House calls this question about international travel, both going and coming.
Yeah.
What are the rules? It's an important planning issue for a lot of folks in the tourism space, and especially the business tourism space, which we have a lot of, or had a lot of. I don't have a good answer for you on this one, other than it's on the radar of the people in DC, and they're thinking about it, and they know it's something they need to sort of come to terms with at some point in the not too distant future. Like I said, I bring it up almost every week as one of those things I think people need to figure out. We have not gotten much insight at all into how they're thinking about state to state travel. I don't think anybody's thinking about restrictions. Okay. It's really about nation state travel, you know, here to Europe, Europe to here, South America, even Canada, people are talking about. I would hope that at some point in the next month or two, we'd have some answers on that, but I don't have any guidance for you on that at this point. Is that the right question, Chris, that you're asking about?
That is a question we're asking about the reopening of the of hotel rooms and whether there's going to be restrictions. But we did see that you were.
I don't think there aren't going to be any restrictions coming from us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So at Logan and stuff, there won't be issues. I know only a handful of countries are open to Americans right now. Everyone's trying to book. I don't know if we're allowing people in from other countries. I'm not sure exactly when that all is going to coalesce around, you know, hotels reopening and rehiring people to be opened.
I don't think we, I could be wrong, but I don't think, quote unquote, we as a country, I mean, we have test requirements as a country for people coming from other places. I don't think we have, if we have actual prohibitions against people from other countries coming to this country, that's news to me.
Okay. So people don't realize you were in Canton this morning at 8:30. You were there for an hour and a half talking about the summer work and summer learning programs that you're implementing with some federal and state funds. It was exciting to listen and hear that A, you were in Metro South, B, you were in Canton in particular, and talking about trying to address some of the issues around learning loss from this pandemic, especially around writing and arithmetic, right? Math. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that went and what you expect as an outcome?
So the state and the feds have put some pretty serious resources into education and into municipalities. I think the total amount of money that is currently coming with this new bill to school districts in Massachusetts is about $1.6 billion. And then there's another 3 billion plus or minus that's also available to local communities, not just for education, but for other stuff. So, I mean, that's a lot of money. And the state is going to receive somewhere in the neighborhood of about $4 billion. Not clear yet what we can spend it on, but we also got resources that we can make specifically available for education purposes. And we are putting about $70 million of that into what we're calling sort of acceleration academies and enrichment programs that we think of as a complement or as an add-on to a lot of the stuff and a lot of the work that's going to be done by school districts around Massachusetts. And if us putting some money into the pot makes it easier for communities to launch programs they might not otherwise launch, or makes it easier for them to bring in a partner who can help them do this, that's kind of the way we want to play. But I think our view is a lot of kids, and especially kids in some of our more under-resourced neighborhoods and families have had a really tough time with the past year. If you don't have, if you don't have broadband, if you don't have a great desktop, if you don't have a lot of private space available to you wherever it is you live, this has been a very hard year. And I honestly think for kids under the age of about 12, I mean, truthfully, I don't know how you teach somebody to read remotely. I'm sure people have figured it out and given it what I would describe as every effort, but that's incredibly challenging. And I think for a lot of the younger kids, and as I said, a lot of the kids in these communities where families just don't have the kind of resources a lot of other families have, the FaceTime about getting back in school now, I think will be extremely helpful. But I really think we got to expect that over the next couple of summers, we're going to be needing to do some intensive work in conjunction and in collaboration with our colleagues in local government and local education to help these kids get back some of what they've lost, not just educationally, but also socially. I mean, a bunch of the money we think we're going to end up spending is probably going to be on what I would describe as sort of recreational type things too. First thing we saw when we got to Canton today was a whole bunch of kids playing in the fields there. They haven't been able to do that for much of the year, and that's a pretty fundamental part of being a kid.
Last one, I guess. One is on jobs, but the other thing I wanted to ask was about your dad. You mentioned your dad throughout this whole thing. You talked about how painful it was to not be able to see him and hug him, like a lot of our parents and a lot of us had the same experience. You mentioned this morning that may change soon, I want to kind of just connect with you and tell you that resonated with a lot of people when you talked about your dad, because you obviously you were putting your money where your mouth was, and you were basically honoring the situation you were asking other people to, which was to honor the virus and make sure you stayed safe. But is that reunion going to happen soon?
Which piece, Chris?
Oh, your dad. I guess your dad. Are you going to be able to see him soon?
So he's fully vaccinated at this point, and has been for a while because he was part of the early crowd that got vaccinated here in Massachusetts, which is great. I'm about a week and a half away from being 2 weeks after my second shot. And at that point in time, obviously, I'll be allowed to hug him, which I really haven't done for over a year. And I went over 100 days last spring without seeing him at all. And I've said this before, the isolation and the loss of physical connection that has come with COVID is brutal to begin with, but it's not just brutal physically and clinically, it's brutal psychologically and emotionally. And it's come with all kinds of just really rotten elements to it that have made things just way more difficult for people than they already were. No church services, no memorial services, no wakes, no weddings, just no gatherings, and no opportunities for people to say thank you or goodbye or God bless and good luck to people. I have to believe that as we continue to get vaccinated and as our case counts go down and as our hospitalization rates go down and as people have the opportunity to just get back to something that looks like, there's just no question that if I ever had any doubt about whether humankind was a social animal or not, it's been completely dispelled by the past year. I mean, we have been forced by this pandemic to isolate from our friends and our colleagues and those whose company we enjoy in a profoundly sort of all-encompassing way, and it makes us unhappy. And we have very few things that are available to us, to sort of scratch that itch. And I'm really kind of expecting that once we get to the summer, people are going to have a chance to do some things that they're going to feel enormously grateful about that they always took for granted. And for me, one of those is going to be able to get back into the business of having a meal 2 or 3 times a month with my father, and the two of us being able to treat each other like father and son instead of like, pathogens that need to do all they possibly can to stay away from one another and protect each other, which is kind of what it's felt like,
Thank you for that. I guess the last one is the jobs, a lot of our companies are having a hard time hiring people right now. You know, in this state, thanks to your leadership, we've outpaced the issue with the virus. We've had more vaccines than other states, and therefore the benefit of the $300 per week is lasting to Labor Day, but people are already ready to go back to work. Is that August date pretty solid, or do you see that coming back to July a little bit, or you know, is there more of a chance that we're going to?
I mean, it really does just depend on what happens with case counts and vaccines and hospitalizations. Like I said, the trajectory we're on is an enormously positive one. And if we stay on this trajectory, I think it's quite possible that we could do something before August 1st. What I didn't want to do was pick a date and end up being wrong in the wrong direction about this. What I was trying to do with this was to say, when do I absolutely positively think, you know, we're going to be in a place where people really can start to think about no limits and much fewer rules, and there'll probably still be some DPH guidance around masks and that stuff kind of thing indoors. But I think the thought in the way we were thinking about it was, you know, it'd be better to go, well, it doesn't need to be August 1st because of all the success we've had in the month of May. We can make it July 15th, or we can make it July 6th or something like that, than just say the date's July 1st, to then not see the kind of progress that we need to see. And we need to see it on case counts and hospitalizations and vaccines in the month of May, and then say, you know what, it's not going to be July 1, it's going to be August 1. That felt to me like a much worse scenario than, you know, picking one I was absolutely sure we could get to and then moving it forward, as opposed to picking one that, you know, might happen but might not, and then having to move back. So some of this is going to depend on, as it always has, on the data associated with how we're doing as a state on some of these key measures.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I know how rough the ride's been for everybody, believe me.
Yeah, employers in particular now are trying to hire back people, and it's just more difficult with the stimulus that's out there.
You know, I think as more and more people get vaccinated, the big fear people may have had about going back to work ought to start to take a back seat. I mean, like I said, we have somewhere around 2.5 million people who are fully vaccinated. We got another 1.5 million, maybe more, who are one dose vaccinated. They will get vaccinated, which should mean that at some point in the next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to have 4 million of our grown-ups who are fully vaccinated. Once people are fully vaccinated, the biggest fear people might have about going back to work should be alleviated. And as that trend continues into the months of June and July, and as people continue to get vaccinated, we will get to the point here where people just aren't going to have to. People aren't going to have to worry the way so many do now about what they don't know. The asymptomatic nature of COVID has always been one of the things that's made it particularly dangerous. And if the vast majority of the people in Massachusetts have gotten vaccinated, people don't need to be afraid to go to work, which I think has been a big issue for a lot of people over the course of the past year.
Great. Thank you, Governor. I don't know, Fred, if you wanted to jump in. Oh, okay, Governor, thank you. I know your staff told us you were on a hard stop.
Nice to see you guys. And like I said, I can't wait to see you in person.
Yeah, excellent. And our annual meetings in November, we'll be in touch.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Mayor.
Huh?
Okay, so that was fantastic to have the governor here with us. Didn't go. We thought we were going to have a hard stop at 12:25, so apologize for the impromptu questions. He also answered some of the questions, but I think he really wanted to talk about the virus, obviously, to begin with. He also was in Canton, so he talked a lot about that. What he didn't say is a lot of our public schools are going to be open this summer, and they're going to be teaching. There's going to be a camp. It's going to be a fun camp with math and writing and reading. And that's their two focuses. And the funding is tremendous. He was talking about this morning from the federal funds to three pockets. One, the state, which is kicking in on some of this. A lot of money is going to the cities and towns, and a lot of money is going directly to schools. And so as a combination, they're able to open these schools this summer so as not to elongate this absence from school for a lot of kids until Labor Day. So I thought that was an exciting announcement, and it wasn't something that was covered. So I'm glad he talked about it today. A lot of us have kids and now on this call, and it's been very, very difficult. So we have some time left. I want to thank Fred and Joe for their roles, and I wanted to turn it right over to the mayor, Mayor Sullivan, who's with us, 13 months strong. Thank you, Mayor.
Hi, Chris, and I want to take a moment and send my condolences to Fred and his family for the loss of Fred's dad. Prayers and thoughts with you, Fred. In terms of COVID, let me just give you some statistics like I do, and I want to say hi to Margaret and Susan and Eli again. We're all in this together. We keep going strong, right? But we're up to 426 loss of life in the city of Brockton. We're up to 13,641 total cases and 280 active positive cases. So we are still in a red classification. My medical consultant, Dr. Rick Herman, believes we're probably going to be there for a while. But with that being said, we are being proactive. We're really rolling out the vaccine. In fact, next week, it's something that hasn't happened in the Commonwealth. We are going to be doing a clinic at Brockton High School for the students, 16 and older. It's a collaboration with myself and Superintendent Thomas and Dr. Murray, the principal of Brockton High. So it's going to be Pfizer. It's going to be two days next week and then 21 days later. So that's really a wonderful thing. I also want to take a moment. Bob Kraft was here in Brockton today with his son, Josh. Just a really generous donation that they made. They bought a mobile van for Brockton Neighborhood Health Center to help with health services and opioid prevention for overdoses. So Mr. Kraft and I had a few moments in private to talk about Brockton. He loves Brockton. He loves the City of Champions brand, and I was really happy to meet with Robert and Josh today. So thank you, Kraft family, for what you do. I have 2 meetings scheduled next week for 2 different developers that have never invested in Brockton, but have a strong likelihood of doing just that. So we have to continue to be business friendly. I want to thank you, Chris, for what you do every day in the Metro, and Joe and Fred. And, we need to make sure that we can pivot from COVID when we do get out of this and make sure we're really in the right position for growth and sustained growth, and really increase the tax base and really the developers reap a benefit, right? Their return on investment is real here in Brockton. So transit orient is key, and had a meeting with NeighborWorks, Rob Corley this week, and they're on track right now for Sycamore and Grove, the Oak Kresge building, and their tenant downstairs is Brockton Beer, and they will be coming. So I'm going to buy the first round for everybody on this call when they open. I want to see everybody there. And again, I mean, that's the game changer for that corner. And we'll continue onward and upward together. So again, thank you, Chris. And the governor was just awesome. He really was awesome. Him and Lieutenant Governor have been wonderful partners with Brockton, and we keep reaping the benefits of grant funding, which is great. It's a catalyst for investment in Brockton. So kudos to him and his time. And I look forward to meeting him in person as well when they come back here for the annual meeting.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. You heard it here first. He's going to be in Brockton in November. Thank you for everything you're doing. I know people don't realize that the mayor and I have exchanges that go back and forth. They're not always easy because I'm hearing the business person's perspective. He's hearing the inspector's perspective. And a lot of times I'm just kind of like a messenger, kind of conveying. And sometimes it's just a matter of approach or tone between the two, or understanding, quite frankly. But the mayor's been good arbiter of that and to bridge that gap, and make, I think, the employees understand more that they can maybe be more communicative and or more gentle in their approach. And our employees, our employers can sometimes try to rise to the occasion, get a little more expertise in their background and assistance before they assume that the city is not being helpful. So there is a common ground, but I think it's a necessity to close that gap quickly, because there's another 14 buildings that are in the process of being acquired or have been acquired that you're going to see spring up and be renewed in the city of Brockton in the next 12 to 18 months. So it's a very exciting time. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. I was going to just ask you about Prava. Prava is the downtown.
Yeah. So I'm going to buy you 2 beers, Cooney, because you were very kind to me right there. But no, so Prova is off and running. I've authorized it. We are also Marvelous Marvin Hagler Day, which is the 23rd, as designated by Governor Baker in the Commonwealth. Marvelous Marvin will be honoring the champ at Brockton High School, Marciano Stadium on that day at 1 o'clock. And we have to meet all the protocols and standards. But, being able to share ideas and being able to really build a catalyst for investment and sustainable. I want to thank the City Council. They just authorized the approval of 5 more licenses of recreational marijuana in Brockton. And again, it's a business, it's real, and it's here, and it's coming. And that brings the total number to 14, which would be the 2 medical/recreational and then the 12 additional. So I'll be taking tours. I've been invited to tour some of those establishments in the near future. I welcome that. And we need to continue to provide the resources so that other businesses come here and those that are here stay here. So we got to keep working.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I'm going to jump now to Bob Nelson, who's head of SBA for Massachusetts, because the governor kind of represented the state piece. We'll come back to Susan and Margaret at the end. But Bob, thank you for being here along with Eli. I understand that you were going to make the comments this week.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and good to see you and good to be with you. Thank you, Chris. But wanted to just start off and say that I know it's cliche, but it's not. The collaboration between everyone, the SBA and the Commonwealth through Secretary Keneally's office. You think back through when this crisis first hit, and the state was first out with their bridge loans, while SBA was trying to get their economic injury loans and the PPP loans up and running. But we've just complemented each other all the way through this thing, but again, we couldn't do what we've been doing without the work of chambers and our community partners. And I have some great numbers that I want to share with all of you. And so on PPP, as of April 25th, here in Massachusetts, over 87,000 PPP approvals for over $6.5 billion. Absolutely remarkable. The past week, there were 4,600 PPP approvals. What people need to know is that the deadline for PPPs is May 31st, but we don't think that the appropriations will last through May 31st. So if you have not applied for a PPP loan, first or second draw, get your applications in with a lender now before appropriations run out. But we continue to process forgiveness applications. And so out of the first 2 rounds of PPP, there were 5.2 approvals. We're at 2.9 PPP loans that have been forgiven. So the goal is that you end up having 100% forgiven, and that's what we're seeing, that the majority of loans, almost 100% of the loans that have gone through the forgiveness process are getting 100% forgiven. So we're making great progress with the forgiveness and streamlining the process. But the next slide is the one that I really am excited about, and I get charged about this. So we just got new numbers as far as the economic injury loan. So here in Massachusetts, this is as of April 28th, 63,000 EIDL loans, $3.7 billion. We've been doing the targeted advances now for a little bit. There have been, for Massachusetts, 1,800 some odd approvals for over $15 million. But if you look at the bottom slide, so in Massachusetts alone, I'm talking EIDL and PPP, over $24 billion. That's just Massachusetts. And if you look at the United States as a whole, and again, I'm just talking about EIDL and PPP, it is almost $1 trillion. So what you have to remember is that the SBA, we are a small agency. And in 13 months to be able to deliver this type of dollars and this type of capital support, it really is only with the help of lenders and with our community partners and with the state and everyone trying to make sure that small businesses know about the resources, the programs, and how to access these. So I do have just a wanted to go over some of the recovery program highlights. It just talks about all the different things that we've been doing and that are keeping the SBA extremely busy. But the shuttered venue operator grant portal that opened up on the 26th, so Monday at noon, the applications are going through, they're being accepted, so the technology is working there. The restaurant revitalization fund portal registrations that started today. We're hearing that the technology is working fine, no hiccups there, and that grant application portal opens up on Monday at noon. So we do want to make sure, and we're encouraging folks to apply day one, minute one for the RRF. We do think that there will be far more demand on the money than there is appropriation. So, we've been doing a lot of trainings and outreach to train small businesses on this, but targeted advances, we're doing those, funds are being dispersed. We just launched on the 23rd, the supplemental targeted EIDL advances. So those will start rolling out with those additional grants of $5,000. As of April 6th, we announced and we are doing EIDL loans up to $500,000 for 24 months worth of working capital. That appears to be going good. I look at the loan approvals on a daily basis to see what the activity is. We continue to process these, what we call the Section 1112 payments, the CARES Act payments, where we're paying the 3 months worth of payments on new SBA loans. That's our 7A program, our 504, our micro loan. It is a tremendous benefit when you think of it, with SBA making $9,000 per month of principal and interest payments. This is not a deferment. This is the government actually making the payments. But our other program enhancements, we do know that there are businesses that need expansion capital. And so they shouldn't be looking to RRF or our disaster programs, but our regular loan programs, the guarantee being increased up to 90%, no fees to borrowers or lenders. There's just so many different things that we've been doing. But I know lots of folks have strong interest in the restaurant recovery program. And we've been doing trainings. They typically take an hour with a half-hour Q&A, but 28.6 billion in appropriations. There's no need for a SAM registration or a DUNS number. This is for bars, restaurants, food trucks, carts. There are other eligible entities if they have in-site food sales of 33% or more, like bars, wineries, other types of entities. We're currently doing a 1,000 entity test. That is going well. So again, I know, folks are always concerned about technology and is it going to work, but things appear to be working smoothly, and we're keeping our fingers crossed for a very smooth launch on Monday at noon. But folks should know that the minimum grant is $1,000. It's a really easy application and a simple way to calculate your maximum grant award. But we're doing a minimum of 1,000 all the way up to 5 million per location, with 10 million per application per applicant and its affiliates. So I want to see a lot of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 grants. I want money going to these smallest of the small. So anyone who's out there who can help us to message to those small businesses so they know about this. This is a grant. This is not a forgivable loan. This is money that they're going to get. They have until March of 2023 to spend the money, a very generous use of the grant proceeds. But the other last thing that I'll mention, Chris, is that there is a priority period for women, veterans, socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses. So they'll have the first bite at the apple. No one needs to have a formal certification, whether it's through the state or through the SBA. It is a self-certification, but we want everyone to apply, whether you're one of this priority group. We want everyone to apply day one, minute one for the RRF. You have the hotline number here that has been provided, the website where you can get the program guide, access to the information, the sample of the application. But I'm going to close with just really giving a big shout out to Eli Spot Fayu, who I know has been working with you over the past year in sharing information. Eli is a star in my office, and he's a star in the SBA, and I am so fortunate to have him working beside me and helping to deliver this information. So again, Eli, thank you. But Chris, you're wonderful to have us on and to share the information. So I'll conclude there, but thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And I agree with you wholeheartedly with Eli. That's why we gave him an award at our annual meeting last year. He's really a superstar. So just wanted to clarify two things on the restaurant grant. It's okay if they receive the MGCC grant and the city grant and the PPP. It's okay.
Absolutely. So,
Okay.
the simple math to calculate the grant for an establishment that was opened, prior to January 1st, 2019, they're taking their 2019 gross, subtracting their 2020 gross, subtracting any PPP loan. And so that's whether the PPP is a first draw, a second draw, whether it's been forgiven or not. They do not include any state or local grants in their 2020 gross income numbers. So they're not going to be penalized for receiving a local or a state grant. So this way they can get the maximum grant through the RRF as possible.
Okay, a second question and final question is on the date of incorporation. Is there a restriction on how old or new the business is in order to qualify?
So there's three different ways that a business can calculate their grant amount. So I gave you what we think is going to be the most common for a business that was established prior to January 1st of 2019. If a business was established during 2019, so say they were just open at the last 3 months of 2019, that's when they started, what we're going to ask them to do through the application, what was their average for the 3 months? They'll multiply that by 12 to come up with an annualized, and then they continue on with the math equation. But this program is certainly eligible for entities that are new and who even have not yet opened, as long as they've incurred eligible expenses. So that would be calculation 3. So
This
again,
is big. This is really big news because we've had a lot of small businesses that mortgaged everything and then opened in March, and they're not eligible for anything in terms of MGCC and a few other things because they started too late. But it's great to hear that this date is much more forgiving.
Absolutely. So again, I would encourage folks to participate in some of the training sessions that we have been and have scheduled. But again, I think, and I know Eli and I have spoken about this, we think this has the potential to be one of the simplest, easiest of our recovery programs that is out there. And so I have a lot of confidence, and I don't think there's a lot to not like about this.
We'll spread the word. Thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
So we're going to move right to Susan and Margaret. I don't know, are you both speaking or who's talking about jobs and workforce and economy and from the state's perspective at Mass Office of Business Development? Margaret?
Thanks, Chris. Great to have the governor with us today, and you've really been so consistent in providing resources at all levels. So I know that we're nearing the end of the hour. I answered as many questions as I could in the chat. I do have my contact information there, or rather in the Q&A. Welcome you to contact me offline. Any of the announcements that the governor made this week with reopening, restrictions, understanding what the expectations are, happy to work through any of those, but I'll cede my time this week.
Great, thank you. Susan?
Oh, actually, we should congratulate you, Chris. My apologies. The Travel and Tourism Recovery Grant that you've received for the Metro South Chamber. Thought the governor might have shouted you out for that when you teed that question up to him. So really great to see that your chamber was a recipient, as well as our regional pilot program, grant program. You know, the city of Brockton, I know Mayor Sullivan jumped off, but you really have been going after everything and been successful in your applications with the Commonwealth. So it's great working with you offline. So look for those My Local messaging in the greater Brockton area. And so thanks for participating and putting the time in, because it's not easy, and you really have gone after every resource that you can bring to your community in partnership, with your lead municipality, one of our gateway cities in Brockton.
Well, thank you, Margaret. And it's a team effort. Our staff, Lexi and Emma and Teresa, have all contributed to these applications. And of course, so we wouldn't be successful unless the people reviewing the applications, which I think Margaret, Susan, and your colleagues, have really been kind to us and to the region. So we appreciate that. So just so folks know, we did receive a $20,000 grant to incorporate the My Local Mass initiative and campaign, marketing campaign for tourism in order to redo our website and incorporate those elements of the marketing program to buy local, to encourage people to buy local. So I don't know if Emma can throw that cover up there, but we've also redesigned the 100-page book for business, which will be going out to 8,000 businesses in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, Susan, did you want to add something?
No, I'm just grateful for everyone's efforts, really. I think Bob Nelson said it best, that it really isn't cliche, but it is the partnership of all people really stepping up, and hopefully we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So thanks for everyone and really kind of being a great team. It's how this whole thing is supposed to work. And so when push came to shove, it actually did work. So I'm just grateful for everyone's support.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you all for being on the call. We, always try to start on time, end on time. When you have folks like the governor coming in, we're dealing with a lot of different pieces of this. So thank you for bearing with us in terms of the time and going over it a little bit. We will be assembling again in the next couple of weeks for the Small Business of the Year Awards. The speaker will be, or is, Kiko Oro, who is a former state representative from the South Shore, Lakeville, Taunton, Berkeley. And now she's the new director of Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, a couple of years now. And she will be coming to speak. We also have two great small businesses that will receive awards and recognition that day. So hopefully you'll join us. You'll receive all the particular information, and this coming Tuesday will be our May action report newsletter, which will feature a lot of the information that we're talking about today. And you'll also receive an email after this session, as you always do, from Lexi with a recording of today's call in case you want to go back and revisit anything. If you have questions for any of our panelists, please continue to ask them or reach out to them. They've, I think, posted all their contact information. They've been great resource and great to get back to the folks on this calls in the past. So again, thank you, Joe Casey, for leading us off. Fred, thanks for introducing the governor and sponsoring this annual program. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all of our panelists and our participants. We had over 120 people on the call today. And again, more than thousands of people over the last year on these calls. So we look forward to continuing them until such time that we don't need them. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we appreciate your time.